Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. We're excited to have you joining us for the Rural Life Virtual Summer Institute. Welcome to Introduction to Personalized Learning. My name is Christy Snyder, and I'll be your session host. I'm here to support the session presenter, Miss Linda Stewart, offer any technical assistance to participants, as well as to share the session evaluation and certificate information at the end of the session. Please don't hesitate to use the chat to ask questions or request technical support.
Hey, I love you, girl.
If you haven't already muted your computer, will you do that, or the Zoom session? And also, if you joined from the Virtual Summer Institute website, you're probably showing up as John Scott, maybe, when that's not your name. And if you want to just hover over your picture, you'll see some three little dots pop up, and you could rename yourself there if you would like. And at this time, I'd like to introduce you to your session presenter, Miss Linda Stewart.
Hello, welcome. First thing I'd like to do is go over some Zoom etiquette, I guess we could call it that. If you would like to see full screen, just double click on your screen for a full screen view and hit escape to go back to the smaller version. In order for us to hear you speak, whenever you have a comment or anything you would like to say, you'll need to unmute yourself. And then if you wouldn't mind to mute yourself back so that we can just avoid any background noise. In order for us to see your face, and we would love to get to put a face with a name, just hit the video recorder and it will let us see you. And for the participant view, if you don't like where your participants are at the moment, you can move that to the top, the side, or the bottom. And the last thing we'll talk about is the chat button. That's going to be very important today. Anytime you have anything that you would like to say or any comments or questions, then please feel free to put that in the chat. If you'll click it, you'll see a little button and it will show you exactly what you need to do. So the first thing, let's practice using the chat, if you wouldn't mind, and type in your name and where you're from. It's nice to see everyone. Your names are going by so quickly, I don't think I can call off every name, but we are very glad to have you here today. Thank you for participating and for joining us.
Washington County, Sullivan County, Jefferson County, Hawkins County. We got people all over.
We're everywhere, and we're so glad to have you here today. Just a side note, I would really love for you to participate today. So if you would participate the way your students participate in class, we will have an awesome session, and I look forward to spending time with you. So without further ado, let's get started. So good afternoon and welcome to Introduction to Personalized Learning. The first thing I'd like to know is, how familiar are you with personalized learning? Would you rate yourself as a 1, you really have absolutely no knowledge, or 2, you have a little bit of knowledge? What about maybe a 3, you're knowledgeable, or 4, you're very knowledgeable, in which case we're going to let you take over the session for today. If you would type your number in the chat, that will give me an idea of where we are. I see lots of 2s. See a lot of 2s going down through the chat. So it looks as if everyone would rate themselves as a 2, having little knowledge. So hopefully after today's session, you'll feel a little bit more knowledgeable and a little more comfortable and confident in personalized learning. Today's goals are for us to examine the 4 core principles, and I may call them 4 pillars at times of personalized learning. And at the end, we will engage in a roundtable discussion of the principles in action. So without further ado, put on your goggles and let's dive in. Why personalized learning? Well, let's look at the eye-opening research. Did you know that 1 in 10 high schools is a dropout factory? That means that no more than 60% of the students who begin as freshmen actually complete their senior year. Is that a surprise to you? It was to me. And what about the fact that 7,000 students drop out of high school every day in the U.S.? Not every week, every day in the U.S. I remember the first time I heard that statistic, I was blown away. I still am every time I hear it or read it, because I can't believe we are losing that many students every single day. The most common reason that students drop out is because their poor literacy skills prevent them from keeping up with the high school curriculum. The rates are highest for low below basic readers at 23%. And if poverty is introduced, 22% of those students don't graduate. So literacy and poverty really do have a compounding effect. In fact, we can predict which students are at risk as early as 3rd grade. Figure A shows the reading scores of all 3rd grade students who were tested. And as you can see, there's an even distribution of high, medium, and low. But now look at figure B. Notice the difference? These are the 3rd grade scores for those students who dropped out of high school. So as you can see, literacy is crucial if we want to keep our students in school. And lastly, look at this. If a 6th grade student has just one of the 4 following indicators, they have a 3 in 4 chance of not graduating. If they have an F in math for the year, an F in English for the year, attendance below 80%, or an unsatisfactory behavior mark in at least 1 class. We all know that student who struggles with literacy, and that low reading ability spills over into math, to science, social studies, writing. They simply can't keep up. So oftentimes their attendance becomes poor, their behavior may escalate, or they may be completely disengaged, and some will just even try to fall asleep in the corner. So poor grades, poor attendance, and poor behavior issues are interconnected. So again, literacy is essential. So based on this information, what are your thoughts so far? You can type in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute yourself and talk.
I've been teaching for over 15 years, and you're right, it does go hand in hand, because the kids that I seen at the very beginning when I first started teaching, compare their skill set as far as reading and even believing in themselves that they can take on a challenge to do anything. It is actually changed 360, a complete 360. It's sad, because I know teachers like myself, every year it gets harder and harder. But for these kids, they have to get it because they are the only ones out of their family that's going to go somewhere, at least 2 years, at least stay in high school. It's my heart. It absolutely kills me. And I know teachers, everyone we can't fix the home. So, and I have a hard time with that because I want them to know their worth, so they'll put themselves into the education to just do better. I was poor. We didn't have nothing, but our mom and dad said, you know what? You're working, you're going to do it. And yeah, we did it. So I want them to know you can. Yes. You can do that. But I don't know. I think the kids are if they're not they're so beaten down at home, if there is a home. Mm-hmm. And they're only with us. I teach 7th grade. I only have them for 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. But it's just, and we're a K through 8 school, thank God. You know, I'm sorry. I mean, it's very sad because I want them to know they can do it, and I don't want them to give up on themselves.
No, it's very easy for them to do that when no one in the home is there to support them. And I think that you're saying things that teachers all over are feeling. It does break our hearts to know that they don't have a real home and someone who truly cares about them enough to push them to want to do better on their own. And it's really hard for them to do it on their own. There's not really a great deal of intrinsic motivation many times. But as Tony Burke said, we should be haunted by these predictable failures. And it does. I've had students in the past I can think of that it haunts me to know how hard I worked, and I did everything at the moment I knew to do to help them, and to see them now that they weren't able to get out and really learn and make something of themselves. Yeah. the way that we as teachers want them to be able to make of themselves. It's heartbreaking. It really is. Does anyone else want to share? I really appreciate you speaking up, Danette. Thank you so much.
Hey, Linda, this is Bethany. I'll just add, agree, thank you, Shay, for sharing. And just what a powerful place we are in as educators, right? To be in a position to impact so many students, especially in our rural area. And, the research that comes out of the 90-90-90 schools, 90% free and reduced lunch, 90% minority, but 90% proficient and advanced, that right there speaks to the things that we know are within our locus of control and the things that aren't, such as the home. But man, what power we have. And we have them in our classrooms in those hours of the day when they're in our schools. So that's just a shout out to all of you teachers who are there with them every single day, being that leader and that motivator, that cheerleader, all those things that we know you are besides teacher. Yeah, I'm so appreciative of everything that you do for the students.
Yeah, definitely. Would anyone else like to share? Thank you all for sharing in the chat and for speaking. That speaks volumes. And I think we all can agree that we are sometimes the only cheerleader that the student has. And they weren't fortunate enough to come from a home like I was, that the parents pushed me to do my best and to try. So it's wonderful to have teachers who really feel that way about their students. But in these next two slides, there is, I think, a glimmer of hope with personalized learning. As you can see, from year 1 through 3, year 1 to year 3, look at the jump in math and reading as to how much growth and improvement there was just by using personalized learning. And when you look at the next slide, these students even exceeded their peers in testing. So I think there is a glimmer of hope. By implementing personalized learning and incorporating strong literacy instruction and stronger strategies, our students' chances of success substantially increase. So if we invest time in ourselves, and we have to take care of ourselves, if we invest time in ourselves and we grow as teachers, our students are going to reap the benefits and grow with us. And I think that's such an exciting prospect that I can make a few changes as I teach, by the materials I use and the strategies I choose, and I can guide those students toward future success and help them, hopefully, give them hope that there is something better out there. So let's take a look at what personalized learning actually is. Personalized learning looks at each student, where they are and where they want to go, where they need to go. It's based on the fact that one size does not fit all. Instruction is tailored to meet their needs and goals. Personalized learning is going to look different in every classroom, in every school, and even in every district. It's really all about knowing your students and their needs. And it takes everyone working together to move a student forward. I always think of that adage, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village of educators to educate a child. None of us are in this alone. We're all in this together. So there are 4 core principles of personalized learning. We have personal learning paths, learner profiles, competency-based progression, and flexible learning environments. Let's take a few minutes and look at each one. Oh, went too far, sorry about that. The first one is a learner profile. A key personalized learning strategy is using data, specifically from multiple sources, to understand progress and to inform development of personalized learning goals. A learner profile is a record of each student's individual strengths, needs, motivations, progress, and goals based on data from all available sources. A good way to get a learner profile started is to give each student an interest inventory at the beginning of the year. An interest inventory asks a variety of questions such as, but not limited to, their likes and their dislikes. Maybe their favorite food, their favorite snack, their favorite animal, their favorite sports team, their favorite vacation spot. You think about it, the possibilities are endless when you talk about likes and dislikes. What are their strengths and what are their struggles? What are their physical and emotional needs? And at the beginning of the year, writing things down, I think students may be more open as to what their needs are instead of you trying to get it from them because you haven't built that personal relationship yet. So this may be where you find out that they need new shoes or that they're struggling with something going on at home. Who's their favorite author? What about their favorite book? Do they have a favorite genre to read from? Do they have a favorite musical artist? A favorite song? Favorite genre to listen to? What about their favorite subject in school and their least favorite subject in school? I think about what motivates them and what irritates them. I think both of those can go hand in hand. So how do they best learn? Is it by standing up? Is it by sitting? Maybe they learn best if they're alone or in a small group. What type of learner are they? Are they a visual learner, auditory, kinesthetic, or maybe they're a combination? What about family? Has there been a recent marriage or divorce, maybe a birth or a death? And we know all those things impact the student. And really any other kind of questions or anything that you might want to know can be added to this interest inventory. You can get online and do a web search of interest inventories, and you can find hundreds and probably even thousands of different types of interest inventories. You can purchase them. You can find some that are free, and you could pick and choose from interest inventories of things that you're interested in finding out about the student. And also remember that the learner profile is a place for students to keep a record of their daily grades, their benchmark tests, their TN Ready scores. It could be their Ames Web benchmark tests or STAR testing, any type of information that might help you to know more about the student and to help them be able to write goals. So they definitely want to write goals and need to write goals. So sit down with each student individually. And I was in the classroom. I know this will take time, but if you'll sit down with them and you'll look over their information and you'll talk with them personally, you're going to build a relationship with them, and it won't be time wasted. It will be well worth your time. A learner profile really should be a living, breathing document that's looked at often, reviewed, and updated regularly to keep the student's educational plan in place. I have a video that I would like to show you that talks about getting to know every student in a classroom. And not just a classroom, but in a school. So I hope you enjoy this video.
Every student walks through the door wanting to feel valued. Every child deserves to have at least one adult in this building who knows them by name. We want 100% of our students to feel connected to a teacher in our building, and that's our goal. It was just a matter of how do we measure this? Early in the year, we conduct a teacher-student connection poster activity so that we can determine which students we've connected with and which students we need to work toward connecting with.
Delaney is allergic to red food dye.
Yeah.
And she also has a pond that she swims in.
We take their whole roster of students, we put it up on a wall, and we ask teachers to go through by name and face. Yep, I know this one, this one, this one.
All by name and face, man. I think that was a team goal by the end of the second week.
Dude, what?
Yeah.
And a week too.
The activity was based around how well do you know your students. Just through this simple, adding a check mark next to the kid's name that you know by name and face, and then the other categories, academic status, and then a more in-depth personal story about them.
She's one that slips under the radar though. She's pretty quiet.
You look at a lot of kids and you go, hey, this student has one check mark. I know them by name and face, but other than that, I don't know where they're at academically. I don't know anything about their personal life. It's probably harder for them to feel valued in a learning environment without that connection to the teacher. So to me, that's what this was all about, a reflective process. How well are we getting to know our kids?
And so you don't get to know those students.
The stones in the river, that's what I like to call them. They're just letting the water wash over them. We gotta go pick up that stone and turn it over.
We want them to reflect, and then it's time to develop an action plan. What are we going to do to make sure that these students are taken care of?
We have personal conversations with our students in the hallways during passing time.
We also do things like Thumbs Up Thursdays or Feel Good Fridays, and we just take a few seconds to have kids share things that they're proud of.
To get to know the kids a little bit better on a personal level, just asking them a simple question as they come in the door. Example, last week I started off by just asking kids what their favorite food or fruit was. And then those questions can get deeper to try and get, a little more personal with them.
Winter. What is it? Summer? Nice.
The students here should be seen as people and not just pupils. The more valued they are for their individuality, the more successful they're going to be in the classroom, the more risks they're going to be willing to take, and that's awesome.
We have seen a huge increase in our students' connection to school, with their connection to the teachers, and I think that's probably the most joy teachers have in their profession. Then the real work can begin.
I'm having trouble getting it to come back.
Might be able to use your escape button.
That's what I'm using, and it's not doing anything. That's what I did earlier, and it worked just fine.
Stop your screen share and then try escape.
Stop screen share?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's try that. Now, try escape. See if you can get back to your presentation.
No.
Let's see. Can you right click over the screen and
Which screen? My shared screen or with the participants?
okay, you go to your screen that has your slides, whichever screen has your slides.
Okay.
Okay. And you click on it and then you hit the escape key and hopefully that'll shrink the video.
Okay, did it.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay.
Okay.
All right, now try that.
Now
Just go ahead and share your screen again.
Okay.
Okay.
It completely went out of it.
Okay, just open it back up.
Okay. Is that working now?
We don't see any screen sharing yet.
Okay. Well, sorry about this. I'm so sorry.
It's okay now.
It's just not letting me go anywhere.
Okay, so
The only thing I see on my Zoom is your name. That's it.
okay, can you mouse over and go to the bottom where the screen share is? It's at the bottom of that screen.
Where on
Okay.
yours?
First of all, go up to the upper right-hand corner and get out of speaker view and go to gallery view. That's number one.
Okay, upper right-hand corner. I don't see what you're talking about, John.
Okay. Yeah, without being right there, it's hard to troubleshoot. Okay, you've got your presentation up, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've got your Zoom screen, right, where you see all the people?
I see you.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you mouse over your screen and go to the bottom, there's no like security, participants, polls, chat, screen share, none of that.
No.
Hit escape key, please.
Okay.
Now, is there anything?
No.
Okay. Let's see.
We're just fine this morning. I practiced.
Yeah, hang on.
Sometimes I'll have to go to the very bottom of the computer screen where the little Zoom camera is.
Mm-hmm.
If I click that, if I hover over that, the Zoom meeting will appear at the bottom. And if I click it.
Right or left click?
Left.
Okay. Now I see Christy's face, but it's not pulling up the whole thing. It's just showing me her face up in the corner.
Okay.
Can you hover at the bottom of the Zoom window underneath the pictures of us, and will icons pop up that say share screen?
No, nothing's popping up at all.
Okay, let's see. Okay, bear with me just a second. Hey, is this your presentation, Linda?
Yes.
Okay. Now, help me out. Which slide were we on?
I'm on number 18. I'm ready to go to 19.
So this is 19, correct?
That is 18.
That's 18. Okay.
No. You were on 19.
Okay, it's coming up. Okay, here's 19.
Yes.
All right, let's just continue on.
Okay. So everyone is still there?
Everybody see that screen? Okay.
Okay, so we're on 19. And this is just to ask your thoughts on the video. So how could something like this, you think, work at your own school?
Something that really stood out to me, Linda, was that's a large school. I mean, that's 905 kids in just a middle school. So it's not even like that's a K-8 school.
Right.
So just the fact that they, had this commitment to really know the students and to get a really clear picture by those charts all around, which kids are more, known by the staff and which ones are maybe less known by the staff, and then how to really lean in with some specifics about what to do for all kids, but certainly the ones that aren't as known by the staff. I love what I think one of our colleagues in the chat, Pamela, shared, something that she does. So yeah, if you all have things that you're doing in your classrooms, you can share, like Linda said.
Yeah, I'm not able to see the chat or anything, or faces. I'm not able to see anything but my own screen.
Pamela just shared that what worked for her was, she says every single day for roll call, she has each of her students stand up and say, hello, my name is, and I, whatever the response is of the day. Some people might say they attended a ball game, they don't like pepperonis, what their favorite sport is. But in that way, they get to know each other. Students and the teacher get to know each other. And it also gives them time to practice speaking out loud in front of the class.
Yes, it most certainly does. That's a wonderful way to get to know your students. Just the simplest things help you to get to know your students. And over time, when you start with those simple things, over time, if something more pressing comes along, I think that they're more willing to share with you because they can trust you and feel comfortable with you. Any others that have shared?
Nothing else in the chat.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Moving on to the next screen, number 20. The next pillar is personal learning paths. Personal learning paths are a central personalized learning strategy. A key element of this strategy is that it provides students with flexible and multiple paths through content. A key tenet of personalized learning is using a variety of instructional formats as a way of engaging different learner types. So the learner profile is helpful in making choices. The teacher sets the parameters for what the students can choose, the content, and the structure of their learning. Feedback is important for this path. Therefore, scheduled time with each student is going to be essential to address any needs such as grade level content, maybe remediation, and enrichment. Students are held accountable by establishing protocols of quality work. When you think about it, we all know those students who will write something down and turn it in and say, oh, I'm done. But then when you look at it, it really wasn't quality work. So this is where you would need to establish some protocols of what is quality work and what isn't to make sure that you get their best work in the end. Depending on the student, you may need to set up routines to make sure that work gets completed by certain due dates. They may get so engrossed in something that it's hard for them to tear away and move on to the next standard that they need to work on or the next skill. Given state standard requirements, students may also have to have limited topics that they can choose from just because of those state standards. So ways that you can implement personal learning paths are through playlists, choice boards, projects and presentations, small and whole group instruction, and just ways to get them involved and engaged in their learning. John, can you go to the next slide, please? I found these 3 articles on Edutopia that discuss student choice. Choose one to read and reflect upon. It will take you approximately 3 minutes to read the article that you choose well. And when we come back together, be prepared to chat about your thoughts on student choice and how you see this working in your classroom. So I'll give us about 3 minutes to read this, and then we'll come back and chat. So,
and you can access those 3 articles. I dropped those links into the chat for you, so you could just choose one from the chat.
Thanks, Christy.
Yes, ma'am.
Is everyone ready? So what are your thoughts on the article that you read? And how do you see this working in your classroom?
Go ahead. This is Pamela. I'm a big fan of student choice because I've seen so many times a student isn't interested in school until they find a subject that really clicks with them, and then there's no stopping them, which is really exciting. But we also use this in our reading groups. For example, I had 6 books that the students could choose from. What are we going to read next? And instead of my choosing a book, I had them read the synopsis and do a little review online about the different books and the authors, and then they had to campaign for the books that they wanted to read first, and then we took a class vote. And so everyone had a buy-in, and they were more engaged in their reading rather than just my handing them a book and saying, this is what we're going to read next. So I'm a big fan of student choice.
Thank you, Pamela. I love that idea, them doing a little bit of research and having to campaign for it. That's a wonderful idea. Anyone else like to share? You can share it in the chat or speak aloud.
Linda, I'll tell you, Mary Tigner from the chat shared that she read the article, Putting Students in Charge of Their Learning, and one part that stuck out to her is the role that teachers should play during a class discussion by walking around to monitor class discussions and ask questions.
Definitely. You should always walk around, in my opinion. I'm not one who could just sit at their desk. I was up walking around, listening, just seeing what the students were coming up with, and then asking them to share out with the whole class. Anyone else?
I have Rachel Shockley. She shared that she struggles with the student inquiry part. She says that her students don't like to think. They want a yes or no and to be spoon-fed, which she said she doesn't do, but it's a hard habit to break.
It is a hard habit to break, especially once they already feel like they don't really have to work towards anything. It is very hard to break that habit, but just keep going. Don't give up.
Linda, I'll add, Rachel, I don't know if you attended earlier today, Kristen Zimke's session on inquiry to read, write, and read. Hold on, let me get the exact title for you. Let's see. Inquiry to read, write, research, and think. It's going to be offered again either next week or the third week, or you could catch the video, but she offers up very explicit strategies to help students with that process, and protocols, sentence stems, a plethora of real concrete ideas to help with that. So maybe check out that session, either attend the next offering or check out the video.
Thank you, Bethany. And thank you, Rachel, for sharing.
Oh, we have some more here. Adrienne Holbrook says she struggles with trying to fit these things into a 60-minute class. And I know Adrienne personally, and I know that she's moving from 90 minutes to 60 minutes. That was last year, her first year with 60 minutes. And that's a big task. I did try, she says, I did try a student choice board when I was absent for a couple of days. She was sick, and it went over surprisingly well. And she hopes to add more of those things next year as they begin their new Amplify ELA program. And she feels like Amplify really allows for those types of activities.
It definitely does. A couple of the schools that I worked with this past year used Amplify and loved it, and it does really help with student engagement and a little bit of choice, and all of the work that they do is surprising. I was very surprised by the improvement I saw with students in Amplify. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Any others?
I'll speak for a little bit.
Thank you.
I was able to scan through all of the articles, but something that that jumped out from one of them was it showed a website called Symbaloo that allowed you to put different apps and websites on there, so the students had a choice where they went to learn about different items. And then it also had a technique about using menus, but that to be very strategic and intentional on what kind of level of questions you put in each box. Like if they were to do, it was a tic-tac-toe board. So if they went diagonal one way, they might have a lower choice or lower order thinking, but somewhere in that line, there was a higher order thinking. And so it just showed how to be intentional about that. And then all of the articles were wonderful. It reminded me of something that I do about after each of our units. I teach 7th grade ELA, and I tried to incorporate a Socratic seminar. And this past year, I did several team Socratic seminars. And so after our unit, students took home a list of questions that were in categories based on, maybe it was about the author's writing or about the main theme was a category. So there's 5 or 6 categories, and the students, when they went home and answered the questions, they got to choose which questions they answered. So if there were 10 questions, they had to choose the 5 they wanted to answer. But they knew the next day when they came in, they were going to be placed in a team. And as a team, they had to decide when it was their turn to speak in the Socratic circle for their team, they had to decide who was going to talk for each category. And that it made it more engaging, and the students had the choice, and they'd had to decide together. So not everybody had to go up there and answer all 10 questions. It was, I get to choose which questions I want. I get to choose which questions I do for my teams.
That's a wonderful idea. Having all of them work together. That's a wonderful idea. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else in the chat, ladies?
No, nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Can you move on to the next slide, please, John? Thank you. So the third pillar is competency-based progression. Competency-based progression is an approach that focuses on the student's demonstration of desired learning outcomes. It's chiefly concerned with the student's progress through curriculum at their own pace. As competencies are proven, students continue to progress. A key characteristic of competency-based progression is its focus on mastery. On other learning models, students are exposed to content, whether skills or concepts, over time, and success is measured summatively. But in a competency-based progression, students are not allowed to continue until they have demonstrated mastery of the identified competency. So an example in writing might be, the student has to cite text evidence to support analysis of the text. And that can sometimes be very difficult to find a good piece of text evidence. But once they've mastered finding one good piece of evidence, then they would move to the next progression, which might be to cite several pieces of text evidence. And then the last competency, once they've mastered that one, the last competency would be taking all of the evidence that they have accumulated and find the evidence that most strongly supports analysis of the text. So each builds on the next as the progression goes. So mastery must occur before the next competency can begin. So as students work through standards, they're given comprehension checks as well as more in-depth tasks to demonstrate mastery. And these checks can take the form of a quiz, a project, or a presentation. So as with personal learning paths, feedback is extremely important, so you will need to schedule meetings with your students. Date and time protocols may also be needed to make sure students complete all standards before state testing. Your new reading curriculum may address personalized learning and competency-based progression specifically. If you adopted Amplify, It does address competency-based progression through its vocabulary app, and it also has the free version of Quill, which is competency-based. And another really good program is No Red Ink. No Red Ink and Quill are both competency-based, and they do work with writing skills. So I've seen those in action, and the students love it, and they do progress quite well. John, would you click again, please? Thank you. So in competency-based progression, what was a concept that was familiar to you? You knew about this already. Is there anything in the chat, ladies?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Maybe it was all new.
Okay, it may have been all new. Okay, what is something that really stood out to you then about competency-based progression?
We do have some things coming in the chat now, Linda.
Okay.
Shared to make time for one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kay Ramsey, I think, was familiar with No Red Ink.
Okay.
Linda, something that stands out to me about competency-based progression is that as an educator, I really have to know my standards.
Yes.
It's almost like you're on this continuum.
Yes.
And so you really kind of have to know, and in ELA, it's even more, I think, critical, because so many of our ELA standards are woven together or could be woven together depending on the need of the text, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
we're digging into, or the experience that we're digging into. So just trying to see how that fits together and to be able to ask myself, you know, how would a student progress on these skills? Which one leads to another? Kind of having that internal dialogue with myself. And that might be good to do with a partner, like a peer, you know, a fellow ELA teacher, you know, to gather some different experiences. But
yes,
that's something that stood out.
I haven't actually seen a teacher try to do this class-based competency-based progression. I've only seen them as with Amplify, using that vocabulary app, or with Quill or No Red Ink. And iExcel and Moby Max are loosely based on competency-based progression as well. So those are programs that the rest of you might be familiar with.
I think we see a lot of technology within this pillar of personalized learning, just because, you know, as that human, that teacher in the room, you know, I naturally, as a human, limited in how many places I can be and how many different paths I could be, you know, progressions, that I could be supporting. So the idea that a computer kind of already has it, you know, embedded in what you can accomplish via that technology is nice.
Yes. And then for some people, having that computer, it may be a sort of a put off. They're afraid that the teacher isn't really teaching, that it's the computer doing you know, the work. I have read things about that as well. But done right, I believe it could work well. And that one-on-one time, as someone said, it would be difficult to find enough one-on-one time, but you wouldn't have to meet with each student every single day, because they're going to be working. And it may be that you only check in once or twice a week for 5 minutes or so. It wouldn't necessarily have to be a very long one-on-one meeting. So any other comments? Okay, John, could you click again, please? Thank you, John. I don't know what I would do without you today. Our next one is flexible learning environments. Certainly not the least of our 4 pillars. Another key attribute of personalization is the extent to which the learning environment is flexible and responsive to student needs, using staff, space, and time flexibly. So let's do a little reflection. When I think of the last 3 months, I have definitely had to be flexible. This is just my own personal way of how things have changed for me. So before this COVID-19, I went to a different school each day. I talked and worked with teachers and students and principals. I researched materials and strategies. I modeled lessons, and I sometimes worked with small groups of kids. So I think about how it was then, and I think about how it is now. So now I'm at home alone. I'm working at a desk. I'm making lots of phone calls. I'm emailing, texting, and having meetings on Zoom. So when I think about how my day has changed and how drastically things have really changed, I keep saying change, but I don't know any other word to use other than change. How has your day changed? And then how do you think your students' days have changed?
I expect that my students have had a lot of unstructured time, just knowing my community a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll speak as a educator and a mama. You know, my son, of course, his schedule had changed, like the rest of us. But there were times when I could just tell that, you know, he wasn't interested in doing the online learning assignment that was taking place, and he wasn't interested at 9 a.m. But you know, at 7 p.m. that night, he was all on it, and I didn't even have to say anything to him. He just was, you know, pulled it up, was working on it. So it allowed him that kind of flexibility to pick and choose a time that worked for him. He didn't want to talk about, you know, this ELA concept at 9 a.m., but he was fine to hop on there of his own free will at 7 p.m. and do it. So, okay, whatever works for you.
Yeah. Definitely
We tried.
flexible.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. You go right ahead.
We did Microsoft Teams, and once a week we actually, like Monday was math, Tuesday was ELA, Wednesday was science, Thursday social studies. And we were excited. We had between 10 and 12 kids, and they loved it. And of course, we scheduled it for an hour, but it was however long that the kids wanted, you know, it to be done. And it was really successful. The problem with it, however, is you found out that a lot of things they didn't do. And you knew that you weren't reaching the other 80 kids that were out there. So, but I mean, we had a very positive experience with it. We just tried it. We just threw it out there and tried it. So I'm really proud of what kids did get involved with it. It was fun too. I love talking to the kids.
Good. I love that example. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else in the chat or anything?
Yes, there's actually quite a bit. We have teachers who are expressing worry about their students, maybe who may not be safe at home, or maybe who aren't being well taken care of, and you know, they're not at school to have those issues addressed. One teacher expressed that when the kids came to school to pick up their materials, they seemed really bored, you know, so they may not have parents at home that are trying to make sure they're staying engaged. Kay shared that it's different for her because she's working alone in her building, you know, that feels really different. Adrian said that she really enjoyed distance learning because she was able to better personalize lessons online and to talk to students on an individual basis. But she did worry about the ones she didn't hear from. Chris said that many of her students were vying for computer time with their siblings. So that's, an issue there. But some students didn't have access to the internet.
Yeah. So if you were trying to do online learning, that did make it difficult for those students. I know some schools were letting them come to their parking lot and use the internet there in order to download assignments, or just different ways to try to make it work for families. So you think about how things have changed for you and how you believe that they've changed for your students. How do you think this is going to translate when we go back to school again?
I think that it is going to be technology driven, more so than ever. I hope that's not the case, because I think, we have to have teachers. They have to be engaged. They have to be engaged with each other. But I am scared that it's just going to be somehow just mostly teaching a lesson, assigning a lesson, maybe through Canvas, and then you kind of just circulate through the week the kids that you talk to. And that's just a guess. I have no clue. We haven't been told anything, but I mean, I do think technology is going to be important, which makes me sad because I'm an old fart. I don't know how to do stuff.
Well, as you can see, I'm not that adept at it either.
Oh, you ladies are fine. Hey, we've got sessions with the Virtual Summer Institute.
True.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Aaron goes so fast through that, though. I'm just, my head is spinning. I can't keep up with him.
Thank goodness for the video option.
I know.
Watch it back.
Definitely. Anyone else like to share?
And Adrienne shared from the chat that she thinks there's going to be gaps, especially for those students without internet. She thinks that teachers are used to these gaps and that we will overcome them. Rachel shared that literacy skills will be even worse for students who didn't do anything at home. Ms. Tigner shared there will be a lot of needs to be met, social, emotional, mental health, before we can even get started on academics.
Yep.
Yes. When you think about flexible learning environments, it's all about flexibility, changing and adapting to the needs of students. So I don't doubt that we will have to plan differently and write our lessons differently, and probably even arrange and run our classroom a little bit differently than we are used to or would really like to. So as you begin to plan for next year, and I'm hoping we do get to start as usual in August or end of July, maybe your school will decide that an alternate schedule would best fit your students' needs, or that personnel needs to be shifted so that they can work with more students, or maybe the school space could be utilized differently. Just keep in mind that the environment is flexible and changes as the needs of your students change. So John, if you'll click, and there are 3 pictures on this, you'll have to click again. There you go. Think about the student who would benefit from standing at a tall table, swaying back and forth, and standing on one leg. Or the student who would benefit from sitting on a wobble stool, and they're wobbling back and forth and all around, and that movement may drive you absolutely crazy for a while, but then you notice that they're raising their hand, they're participating, they're doing their work, they're participating in discussions, and you see a different student there. Or think about the student who likes to sit maybe on the floor or at a low table with low stools. Maybe they have short legs and it would be more comfortable for them that way, or they just like to sit low to the ground. Or the student who wants to sit at a traditional one-piece desk or table and chair. We always will have students like that as well. But you just have to think about flexibility. Another key aspect of personalization in flexibility is student grouping. So using data frequently to adapt student grouping strategies is another way to be responsive to your students' needs. So think about the student who would benefit from working with a partner or in a small group. And any of these arrangements could help students stay engaged in their classes and in their work. So keep what you've learned about yourself the last few months in mind as you plan for the upcoming year. Do you have any wonderings or anything? Will you click again, John? I'm sorry. Any wonderings or anything new to you, or any comments you would like to make?
Well, how are they going to get there? Is it one teacher to 9 kids? I mean, we don't, the CDC has said, ABC, everything has to be sterilized, and I just don't have a clue. I don't know how it's going to be done. It scares me that I don't know, because I like to know ahead of time. and this, it's like that. If there is a plan, you didn't know there was a plan, and it's probably already been changed, and that's why you don't know it. I just really think there's a lot of open gaps there, and I hate that. I'm trying to work on that part of me. But yeah, it just keeps me wondering.
Oh, I wonder if we lost Linda. John, do you see Linda on your screen? She'll pop back in a second. Christy, anything in the chat that people are sharing about flexible learning environments or things they're doing in the classrooms?
We've got Pamela. She says she's standing right now at a tall table.
Woohoo, Pamela!
Yeah.
Your video on. No.
She also has a standing section in the classroom, so obviously she values that. She personally knows the value of that. Lynn is sharing that she keeps clipboards accessible if students need to stand. Let's see, Adrienne, she's always allowed students to stand, sit on yoga balls, pick where they want to sit in the classroom, and she's seen a lot of improvement in those kids who are allowed to do that. One thing I've seen is when I started this grant, I thought that flexible learning environments was, basically just flexible seating. And what's been really cool to me is to go to schools where they're using the flexible scheduling. And, we've got ELA teachers partnering with social studies teachers to, maybe they would go down to the cafeteria and they would rotate through learning stations and work together. And the kids loved it, and it was just really impactful, not only for students, but even for teachers. Everybody learned a lot. It's really cool.
Well, that reminds me of an example where, schools were turning part of the lunchtime, space in the lunch cafeteria as well, but during lunch for book studies. You know what I mean? Like usually we think, okay, we're not doing school stuff at lunch, but when they ask kids, hey, would you be interested in having a space over here every day to just bring your books and sit and talk about what you're reading? Yeah, sure. And they were like, really? And so they did it. And there you go. Every day kids were rotating in and out of these book circles at lunch during what would otherwise have been their free time. They were students were choosing to go and talk about books. And, we just hadn't thought that they would be interested, but they were. So that was kind of neat.
I think Linda's back.
Oh, hey, Linda.
I don't know how it happened, but I'm back.
Somebody beamed you back up.
Yeah,
I've
wanted to say a couple times, beam me up, Scotty. Oh, thank you, ladies. I do appreciate your help, and everyone who's on my session, thank you for your patience. I'm sorry it's been such a trying hour, but anyway, so for the past hour, we've looked at personalized learning together and the 4 different pillars. So now I would like for you to dig in a little bit deeper on your own using the personal learning pathway, and Christy's going to drop that in for you. The personal learning pathway, I'm almost afraid to click. I'm afraid I'll go away again. But once you open it up, I'll just talk about it instead of trying to go in it myself. But the learner profile has there we go. Thank you, John. We have the personal learning pathway it has all 4 pillars, and each of these gives you some information that you can look at. The learner profile has a couple of articles, and it has profile examples and guiding questions to help you through. The video is the same video that we watched earlier, but honestly, every time I watch that video, I get something new. To me, it has a lot of little hidden gems in it. The flexible learning environments also has a video. It's a really good video. It has articles and guiding questions that can help you through it as well. The personal learning paths has a video, it has an article, and it has examples of resources that you can use for student-centered instruction, like the templates for a playlist and the tic-tac-toe template, and it also has guiding questions. And then the last one, Competency-Based Progression, has articles for feedback and guiding questions to go along with it. And if you remember, feedback is important in personal learning paths and in competency-based progression. And those are 3 good articles to look at. So I'm going to set my timer for about 17 minutes. I'll give you time to stand up, go to the restroom, stretch a little bit, and look into these pillars. And when we start with the pillar that you think you are most interested in first, look at it, and then if you have time, please look at the others as you would like. And when we come back together, we'll chat and wrap up. So I'll set my timer, and you can go ahead and get started. Okay, if we can come back together. Thank you for taking time to look at that. Was there anything in particular that stuck out to you about anything that you saw today? Or read or heard that you'd like to share?
Well, I'll break the ice.
Okay.
What kind of stuck out to me is when they said when you're doing like a one-on-one with the student, talking about, improvement or what they need to improve on, it showed me that I needed to make sure that I expressed it in a proper way, being more direct with the exact skills instead of just saying, hey, look, I need you to really go back over the reading and look at those key words. I need to be more exact to what each kid needs. And sometimes too, when you're a teacher, kids automatically don't want to talk to you after you, because when you bring them one-to-one, they're like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I've got to soften. I have to soften up because to get that, for me to be able to have a round room table discussion, because I got to soften up. I got to do it more directive and do it differently. No intimidation. Let them know it's skills you can work on, not that type of thing.
Okay, thank you for sharing. I
Don't do that type of thing. But the kids may think that.
Would anyone else like to share?
Linda, from the chat, Adrienne shared that she liked the idea of what I need days. She'd love to find a way to make that work at her school.
The win days.
Yes. And then
Linda, that makes me think about, for our friends using Amplify, the Flex Day, where you're using data from what you're learning about your kids and their, how they're progressing on different standards and skill sets, and kind of building in some flexible time to give a day where you're really meeting everybody's individual needs.
Yes. Yes. If any of you have Amplify, that will be embedded within the program.
Hope shared that she looks forward to compiling more complete learner profiles for her students next year, and she appreciated all the examples that were provided. Also, Ed Puzzles mentioned. Adrienne feels like that's something that could be utilized in distance learning if we needed it again this year. Someone else is mentioning Ed Puzzle. Let's see, win days are mentioned again. Learner profiles are something that Jennifer plans to implement. She also likes Ed Puzzle. She liked the idea of collaborating and having classes together. Kay from Del Rio said that she said, we're a small school and personally know our students. However, we can definitely improve using the instruction and resources part. And she really liked the personalized learning plan and the templates that you shared. We've got another one from Corinth, I think that is, excuse me. I feel like I get to personally know our students by the end of the year, but I would like to know them sooner with personalized learning.
So it sounds as if you've, some of you already have a good vision for how you would like to start utilizing personalized learning, which is wonderful. We can build on that. So now that you've kind of chosen what you think you might want to use, what are some ways that you could build on what you've learned today? What's something you would like to do next?
Someone shared that they plan to use learner profiles. Maybe that's something they haven't done before. She thinks it's a fantastic way to get to know your students better and to better tailor their instruction. Paige is also mentioning learner profiles.
Do you see any challenges that you might encounter with anything that we've talked about today?
I love the thoughts of taking the two classes together somewhere and let it be social studies and ELA, and being, being able to teach a skill and well, teach a lesson, and then you're able to work with someone else too to help you with handling whatever the kids seem to be having issues with. I love that. I just don't know how that would work. And I love the learner profiles. I think that's great. There's a lot of it that I liked, but I would love to see working with a partner. Definitely going to do the learner profiles.
Okay, excellent. Good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you everyone for sharing. So those of you who this is your first year coming on board, then you will have a coach that will be coming to your school to support you. So what are some ways that you think your coach might be able to support you? Anything off the top of your head? I know I've thrown a lot at you today, so it will, you may just need to think a little bit about that one, which is just perfectly fine. I'm with you, Rachel. I like to see, and then I love to see how it works, and then try it. I'm exactly the same way.
I totally agree with Rachel, which teaches a hall across from me.
Oh, cool. Well, the two of you will get together then. Right there is your teammate to work together with.
But I'm like her. I like to see somebody do it and actually produce it. And more than one day. You know, I would like to see them do it like a week.
And I think Erica said something about could coaches help with looking at data? Yes, coaches can help you look at data. Okay, John, would you mind going to the next slide, please? So let's look behind the curtain for a second. I've thrown a lot at you today, as I said, but during the whole entire session that I've done for you today, I've sprinkled in a few strategies that you can incorporate in your lessons on the first day of school. Can you identify any of them? I'll start you out. One was mini lessons. I taught you a little bit about each of them. I gave you a definition and I gave you information about each of the 4 pillars. Okay.
You gave them choice, Linda, in what article they read. You didn't just give them one and said, they read this, but you gave them choice.
Yes, I gave you choice in the article and in the pathway. You could look at whichever one you wanted to start with. So you were given choice. You watched a video, which is also another way that you could incorporate some personalized learning. And you could have even, instead of just one video, you could have had 2 and given them choice there again. Then we also talked about your own personal experience when we talked about flexible learning environments. Bringing in what's personal to someone, I think, is a good way to get them engaged. And as I said, looking at the personal learning pathway, given choice there. So, and then also throughout the entire session, you were given brain breaks and studies have, and reflection. And studies have shown that you can work with a student for their age plus about 2 minutes. So when you think about middle school age students, you may have about 15 minutes that you really can work with them and keep their attention before it begins to wane. So try to give brain breaks every 15 minutes or so, just a couple of minutes. It doesn't have to be anything long and drawn out, but I think it will help you then to get them back and get them engaged once again.
Linda, I'm a visual learner, so the video was nice for me just because I got to like see something in action after having read and heard you talk about it from the slide, and then I got to kind of see it in a real school with real kids, real teachers. So I appreciate that.
I'm the same way. I want to see it. I want to see it happen. You can talk to me all day and I may not remember everything you say, but if I can look at it, then I'm more apt to remember what people are talking about. So as you can see from today's session, personalized learning is attainable. You can do this. And based on the input that I've had from you guys, I know that you can do it. I believe that you can do it. And so just get creative and find ways to implement just small things into what you're doing. So I'll hand this over to Christy to talk about the survey and certificate information.
Thank you.
So thank you for attending our Virtual Summer Institute session. No, we had some bumps along the way, but it's just very much like a regular classroom, isn't it? Please take our 1-minute survey. This survey allows us to reflect on your thoughts about the session. We're always looking for ways to improve. It also helps us to collect your information if you would like to receive a certificate of attendance. So at this time, I'm going to drop that link into the chat. Actually, John has already done that. Thank you, John. And you could fill that out now. And Linda, I'll send it back over to you.
Well, it has been a privilege to be with you today and to spend a little bit of time with you. And I'm sorry about all the little bumps in the road, but as Christy said, that's all part of being in a classroom as well. So it's been a pleasure to get to introduce you to personalized learning. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and that you have a successful new school year. So thank you very much.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
See. We'll leave the session open for a few minutes so everybody has a chance to use the link to complete the survey, and then we'll close it out.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. We made it through. Very good.
You did a great job. Don't worry about it. You did do a great job.
Thank you.
And I absolutely love the thing where the teachers got together and shared information across the board about the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that video. You need to go back and watch it again. You'll find other things in it that just really will pop out at you.
Christy, I'm going to tell you, I don't know what the video recording is going to look like. I don't know. We'll
I think
see.
it was just Grace that I logged in first because it said it would be recording on my computer.
Yes. It's recording on mine and it should be recording on yours.
Okay.
So whenever we end the meeting, which you will do, you'll go down to leave. Don't do it yet, but you'll go leave and then leave it for all. And when you leave it for all, it closes everybody's Zoom down. And then a box will appear on your screen, probably about that big, and it'll say converting the video. Okay, and you'll have this goes from 0 to 100%. It may take 30 minutes for that to happen, but it'll just sit there and download to your computer and mine is what it will do.
Did you say 30 minutes?
It could be. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you for that.
Mine, it takes about 20. Okay. And it's your internet connection is what it basically is. Okay.
Oh, that would have worried me to death. I would have thought something's wrong.
You just let it sit there and it'll go from 0 to 100 and it can take up to 30 minutes for that.
Okay.
All right. I think probably everybody's had a chance to use the link. I see, well, let's see, was it 39? It's now at 54. So we've had about 20 people take the survey. So I'd say go ahead and close it and we'll go from there. Very good, ladies. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
We'll see everybody tomorrow. See you, Bethany. Okay.